I grew up in West Texas. The land was flat, the dirt was plentiful, and the trees were few. I was not surrounded by what one might call a lush landscape, but I was surrounded by an incredible network of family, friends, and neighbors, people that knew me and knew my family. And if anything had ever happened, they would have made sure that I was taken care of. Now, I naively believed that all children had something like this, and then I went off to college. The summer before my senior year, I met a woman who was a foster parent. Now, conceptually, I'd always known that foster care existed, but I'd never interacted with it at all, ever, on any level. And so I meet this woman, and the next thing I know, I'm volunteering as a CASA, or a court-appointed special advocate for children in foster care. And basically, my role was to meet the kids I was appointed to, get to know them, figure out what was in their best interest, and then speak up for them in court. Through volunteer training, I learned about all the technical reasons why children enter into foster care. And technically speaking, it's almost always neglect or abuse. But I also learned the real reason: poverty. Now, when we hear the term poverty, most of us immediately think of money. But I'm actually not talking about a lack of money, but a lack of relationships, something we call relational poverty. You see, when a child must be removed from their guardian, the state tries very, very hard to find a relative, a neighbor, a friend, someone that knows the child to take custody. But when a safe place cannot immediately be found, the child enters into foster care. Now, some of these kids will go home, and some will go live with relatives, and some will be adopted by non-relatives. But not all of them. You see, some of them will bounce around from foster home to foster home until they turn 18, or age out, as we call it. But they don't simply disappear when they turn 18. And just like when they came into foster care, they'll still be in relational poverty. And what this means is that there isn't that cousin who can get them a job, and there isn't that aunt to help them with college, and there isn't mama's couch if everything goes wrong and the sky falls. So for children who age out of foster care, within 1 year, 2 out of every 3 will be incarcerated, homeless, or dead. So why do I care about the 641,000 children that are currently in foster care in the United States? Well, there are 2 little reasons. One took its first steps across my living room floor, and the other one spent his second Christmas with us. These were my foster sons, and my husband and I loved them more than we ever could have imagined. So when I stand up here and say that our foster care system needs to be reformed and that our current outcomes are just completely unacceptable, some may say that I am simply a sentimental foster mother who refuses to accept that some of these children are just bound to end up in trouble. But that's not what the research tells us. In fact, neuroscience has proven that children are incredibly resilient. In fact, what we once thought were permanent predispositions to certain destructive behaviors can actually be changed if we remove a child from an unsafe environment and place them in a safe, loving, nurturing home. Their little brains can literally rewire themselves. And remember, our brains don't stop developing until about age 25. So given the right environment, there's no telling what these kids can overcome. Y'all, it's like we can do neuroscience or something, except we don't even have to get a PhD and an MD and all this stuff like this guy over here. Also, some may think we simply need to scoop up these kids and excommunicate their birth families. But it's just not that simple. In fact, research shows that children actually do better when they stay in contact with their birth families. And also, who's ever heard of Google? Okay, yeah, how about Facebook? Yeah, so have foster children and their birth families. So given the research that shows it's almost always a good thing, and the reality of our hyper-connected world, we have got to rethink the way that we do this with kids in care. I'm sure that many of you grew up like I did, with a safety net of relationships. There's no way that I would have ever ended up in foster care because I didn't grow up in relational poverty. If I couldn't have stayed with my parents, I would have had my grandparents, an uncle, a longtime neighbor, a friend's mom. Somebody would have taken me. And it's not because I'm special. And it's not because I deserve to have a future and these kids don't. It's simply a matter of the circumstances into which I was born. So, what could we do to give these kids a chance? What could you do? The first thing is something you're probably already doing. Vote! We have got to make foster care a priority. Call your elected officials. Many of the well-researched best practices cannot be put into place unless our state and federal laws allow them to be. Also, volunteer. In fact, volunteer even if you don't get a t-shirt. Become an advocate, become a mentor, become a part of their lives. All right, and now y'all knew this one was coming. If you've ever considered foster care or adoption, I urge you to take the next step. I can tell you personally that even though the boys weren't with us for long, they changed our lives forever. It was not easy. It wasn't. But it was worth it. These kids are not broken beyond repair. They are not lost. Their futures have not yet been written. There is indeed hope. Thank you.